Hello and welcome to our Anthropology Q&A. And here we are going to talk about test number 1. See, try to understand the purpose of this program. It is to enable the people. Enable means उनको बनाना है, right? Not unable. So enable those who face difficulty in writing, right? Who have less clarity on the concepts. So for that, this program will be very, very useful. And in this first test, we are going to take all the 5 questions that we have given to you. Right. So let us start with the question number 1 without delaying it. First question is about the relationship between anthropology and behavioral sciences. It is about the relationship between anthropology and behavioral sciences. Okay, so let us try to think about it that we humans are complex beings, and understanding ourselves require the approach, methods, techniques of different disciplines, right? So to understand ourselves, to understand humans, we try to trace or we try to see the relationship between other disciplines, which is anthropology, right? So the purpose is that, so this question required to understand, right? You must understand that what you are going to write in this answer, this particular answer, right? So start with the introduction, right? And in this introduction, you can talk about the need. You can start with the need of this relationship or this interdisciplinary collaboration between various disciplines, whether it is behavioral science, such as psychology, right? Psychiatry, and anthropology. Anthropology is a holistic study of every aspect of the mankind. Behavioral science relates itself to the behavior. It has its own techniques, methods, it has its own scope. Anthropology differs from it significantly, right? Now, after that, after introduction, in introduction you will talk about the interdisciplinary collaboration and its need, right? And when you look at this interdisciplinary collaboration, you have to think about certain similarities that are there between one or the more disciplines, and you have to think from the perspective of the differences, right? And finally you will talk about the conclusion. In the conclusion, you will talk about the outcome of this convergence of these two. What will be the outcome? That means deeper understanding, more holistic understanding of the mankind, right? Now, in this similarity and differences, what you will fill in, that will be very important and a defining feature of your answer that will make your answer distinct, right? Or you can say more valuable, more enriched than the others. So let us talk about the similarities between behavioral sciences and anthropology. So similarities, you can talk about the similarities from three perspectives. Here you can take anthropology, and here you can take behavioral sciences, right? So first thing is that what both of they study, both these disciplines, this is anthropology and this is behavioral science. See, one thing you have to understand, even that you can incorporate in your introduction also, that anthropology is the study about, it is a holistic study about the human behavior, right? And naturally behavioral science also studies about human behavior. So there is a similarity in its subject matter, right? Both studies human behavior, right? You may find this definition of anthropology at multiple places, right? That it studies what Harkowitz says about anthropology, that anthropology is the study of man and his works, right? In his book Man and His Works, what he says, that anthropology is a study of man and his works, right? So the works are the outcome of his behavior. Whatever you see outside, it is part of human behavior, right? How we exploited nature, right? How we relate ourselves to our society, our culture, that is part of our behavior. The way we produce food, the way we consume food, the way we organize ourselves in the society is part of our behavior. Everything that you observe is part of your behavior. So, subject matter of both is similar, right? There will be difference in also in this subject matter itself when I will talk on the differences. Right now we are talking about the similarities, right? Mark this. The methods that are being used, methods and techniques. Do you think there is similarity between the two? See, both uses similar methods and techniques to an extent, not completely, but to an extent, yes. Both borrows, you can say, methods and techniques from each other, right? For example, Cora Du Bois, she belonged to the culture personality school. Cora Du Bois, right? She belonged to this culture personality school. And what was her contribution? She belonged to the third school. See, there are three schools within this culture personality school. Let me tell you in brief here itself. The first school says that the personality influences the culture. Personality influences the culture, and from this sub-school belong this Ruth Benedict. There was another school which says that culture influences the personality. From this school we have Margaret Mead, and there was third school that both influences each other. Culture influences personality and personality influences culture. From this school we have three important candidates, scholars, that is Abraham Gardiner, Ralph Linton, and our Cora Du Bois. Cora Du Bois gave the concept of model personality, right? And this concept she developed on Alor people, right? Because of her field work on Alor, on which she wrote a book, Peoples of Alor, right? What was, what she used? She used projective techniques, Rorschach's test. And these tests, these projective techniques are primarily she took these from the behavioral sciences. So you can say both use similar techniques and methods, right? Behavioral science use interviews in order to generate information, right? from the participant. Here ink blot tests are used, right? Even the projective techniques like Rosas test, कुछ image दिखाया जाएगा, right? And the viewer, or you can say the patient, which is being you can say diagnosed, will be asked to answer certain questions. Here, these are used here also, right? Interview technique is used here, right? This projective techniques, ink blot test, these are used by both, right? Then there is a third important distinction, or sorry, similarity. So what is the third similarity? The third is that both borrowed concepts and ideas from each other. Both borrows concepts and ideas from each other. What are the concepts and ideas which were borrowed from each other? Right? See, anthropology have an important concept of psychic unity, right? Which was used by classical evolutionists like E.B. Tylor, Bastian, right? Morgan even. Then this psychic unity principle was used by structuralists. The psychic unity concept was used by even culture personality school. It was used by even cognitive anthropologists, right? So this concept of psychic unity, it is borrowed from behavioral sciences. What is psychic unity? Psychic unity is a kind of principle which say that we humans, all humans across the world, right, we think and respond in the similar way towards the similar situations. That means अगर situation same है तो human reaction, human response same रहेगा हर जगह पे, right? ये psychic unity है, right? जीरो की discovery इंडिया में भी हुई, वेस्ट एशिया में भी हुई, ग्रीस में भी हुई. That is a kind of example of psychic unity, right? So psychic unity, basically you can say the concepts are used, this concept is used by this as well as behavioral science, right? The ethnomethodology, right, or ethnoscience, the way, the logic which is used by the natives, that is ethnoscience, right? So this logic is used by this behavioral scientist as well as anthropologist at the same time, right? So you can say the concepts and ideas are borrowed from each other. Now what are the differences? Because yes, we know that both are similar, but there must be some also. What are those differences? See, the first and the foremost difference is that it comes on holism aspect. This is anthropology. And this is behavioral science, right? So anthropology is whole, right? It is holistic. That means anthropology studies everything which is related to mankind, us humans, right? That means anthropology studies the biological aspect, the socio-cultural aspect, the linguistic aspect, the archaeological aspect, everything related to the mankind is studied. Behavioral sciences is atomistic, right? You can say the nature of anthropology is holistic discipline, where it studies all aspects of the mankind, whereas behavioral science is atomistic. Behavioral science is atomistic. See, further, you can derive on nature itself. Anthropology studies the group behavior, right? It studies the cultural behavior, because man is a cultural being, societal being. So how men respond in a culture, how men behave in a culture, man means human, right? I'm not going on to that dichotomy of male female. So how men behave in a culture, so it studies the group behavior. Right? Whereas behavioral science is primarily concerned with the individual behavior. जो इंसान साइकोलॉजिस्ट के पास काउंसलिंग के लिए जाएगा उसी को ही इलाज मिलेगा, राइट? और साइकियाट्रिस्ट के पास जाएगा उसी का ही काम हो रहा है. यहाँ पे एंटायर ग्रुप इज बीइंग स्टडीड, राइट? सो व्हाट इज द ऑब्जेक्ट ऑफ स्टडी? ग्रुप. हियर object of study here is individual, right? One person is being studied, right? Now you can go on to this, you can say what is the subject matter, how both differs in subject matter. में difference कैसे? It studies human biology, right? It studies human society, culture, etc., right? Whereas it studies primarily, it studies the human behavior, right? It studies human behavior primarily. Okay. It uses, now basically अगर हम देखें what are the methods used, right? How both sciences differ in terms of methods used. See, we have seen some similarity in the methods, but methods used are also different. What is this? See, anthropology use participant observation to study the group, right? Whereas behavioral science is primarily limited to the laboratory, or you can say clinical methods. It is using clinical methods, whereas anthropology, it uses the, you can say, field methods, like participant observation. Right? These are the differences, right? But despite of all differences, you can say that anthropology and behavioral science collaborate, right? Join hands quite often, and the boundary that we see within two disciplines is basically artificially drawn, right? The boundary that we try to separate, that is artificially drawn. Right? So you can say both are very intensely related. Both enriches one another in order to increase the understanding about humankind. That is what your first question is. Right? So I believe I made it quite clear. Second question. Second question is relationship between anthropology and medical science. Relationship between anthropology and medical science. Nowadays, you know that we are living amidst this pandemic, and medical science played a very important role in managing and helping us in this situation, right? So we can think about the incidence, spread, right? Mortality, death rate, or you can say these epidemics, pandemics, endemics, these can be studied, right? Anthropology can study these diseases at the group level. That is epidemiology. That is a branch of medical science, right? So basically, how both of these are related, how both are different. Our purpose is that, see, even medical science studies that how human diseases are explained, how people perceive that what is disease, what is illness. Let me give you a few insights about these things first before we start with this question. The structure of the question will be same. There will be introduction, right? Then we'll talk about similarities between the two. We'll talk about the differences between the two. We'll talk about the borrowings and everything, right? And then we'll conclude. These 4 headings are must, right? Basically, we will divide the entire question into these 4 major parts. Let me ask you 2-3 questions first. What is disease and how it differs from illness? You can understand this by just taking one example, right? There may be some person who is diabetic, but that person does not realize that he have diabetes. He is moving in and around, enjoying his life or her life quite easily without knowing that he is carrying diabetes, right? So that person have that disease, but he is not ill. So what is illness now? Illness is the experience of disease, right? Anthropology look at things like this, right? It tries to understand everything from the perspective of human experience, human behavior, right? From the medical science perspective, that person is diseased. But anthropology look at things in a different manner. You can think in a similar way, what is treatment and what is healing, right? So you can just think about these things. It will help you to think, to channelize your energy in a proper way, right? So in the introduction, you can either start with what is medical science. You can just start with the definition of both of them. That is the easiest way, right? Because some people may not find it very good to write introduction, right? Or they may not have that much understanding initially. So you can find this easy way by writing the definition of the two. Or you start by using the same lines, that both of these disciplines, they overlap at many places and they differ at many places, right? The interdisciplinary collaboration between the two disciplines is a kind of, it gives more clarity or more information about the human nature or human behavior, right? How both are similar? Both of these you can again start with the subject matter, right? So both studies the medical systems of human populations, right? So subject matter, both studies this what you can say medical systems of human populations, right? Medical systems, this can be OJA, right? Is that so? Is OJA not a medical practitioner? Yes, indeed, right? Populations have different types of medical systems, right? And both try to understand that what are the different types of medical systems are there, right? But yes, anthropology primarily look at these things, and medical science is primarily looking at the modern medicine, right? Allopathy, right? Or even there are other traditional medical systems like Unani, like yoga, right? Naturopathy, all these medical systems, right? Then both anthropology as well as medical science devote itself to the research and development to find newer ways of diagnosis and treatment, right? So both do R&D to find newer ways of finding a treatment or diagnosing a disease, right? See, nowadays in present time, You know that this COVID pandemic is there. We are amidst this pandemic. And in this pandemic, you might have come across many DNA technologies which are used both by anthropology as well as medical science. Right? DNA technologies are used by both. For example, RT-PCR, right? Reverse transcriptase polymerase chain reaction. This RT-PCR is used in COVID testing, right? Whatever vaccines you have taken other than Covaxin, these are manipulated, right? Some have this Covishield have some protein from the virus and this virus from the chimpanzee, and both were mixed. What is this? So there is the use of this DNA, right, technology. Okay. So that is also used by both. It is used by medical science as well as anthropology. Both borrows each other's concepts and methods, right? Both use each other's methods and techniques, you can say. So that is how both have similarity. Now, both may have similarity, but both have the differences as well. What are the differences? One more similarity you can see. One more similarity that is very important and that will open your eyes further. This is, say, anthropology. This is medical science, right? What is this? Medical anthropology. So both have similarity, right? That the combination of the two gave rise to a new branch, an interdisciplinary branch that is known as medical anthropology, right? Which studies the medical systems of the primitive people as well as the modern people. So the relationship between the two can be most visible at this branch only, right? This branch reflects the true nature of their relationship, where both of them are similar and they are different, you can say, right? Then you can write the differences easily. The differences, again, you can think about the differences from three perspectives: scope, subject matter, and methodologies used or methods used. See, all of you know that the scope of, not here, scope of anthropology is very wide, right, as compared to medical science. It has universal and holistic scope. Universal means anthropology is applicable at all levels of our development. What are the various levels of our development? Primitive society as well as modern society. You can talk about the peasant societies as well, right? So it is, scope is universal. Anthropology scope is universal as well as holistic, you can say. That means, holism means that it talks about all aspects of the mankind. Whereas the scope of medical science, in its true nature, it is, you can say, limited to allopathy and the modern, you can say, science, right, and atomistic, right? It is universal and holistic, it is limited and atomistic. Second, subject matter. See, just think about the subject matter of anthropology. It studies everything, na? Everything which is concerned with us. Whether it is biology, society, culture, values, customs, our language related to culture, anything that you can think of is being studied. That is the subject matter of anthropology. Development, policy making, poverty alleviation, everything. Here it concerns primarily with the disease, their diagnosis and the treatment, right? Here it studies, even it looks at the disease from the illness perspective, right? The social aspects of the disease also are looked into here. Here it is primarily concerning itself to the biological aspect of the disease, not the socio-cultural aspect of the disease, right? Don't think that the sanitation, which is a social issue, right, is not related and it is not concerned by medical science nowadays. That is what we see, that both are overlapping now, right? Whatever you see outside, you see medical anthropology now. You don't see that strict medical science outside, right? In your policy making, whatever your municipality and all these bodies are doing, they are using this interdisciplinary approach nowadays, right? Methods used, right? See, methods, you can say, anthropology use both scientific as well as cultural methods to cure a disease, right? Here, magico-religious practitioners like shamans, right? They are also there, right? At the same time, there are doctors too. Even what, Khaka committee, even Debar commission, they have suggested that the doctors, the medical professionals, they should collaborate with the local healers like Ojas, right? Because the people have belief in Oja, but these Ojas, if they participate actively with the doctors, they can better deal with the disease, right? Or the illness that the tribals face, their malnutrition, every issue can be taken care of if both of them collaborate, right? Now, what kind of methods you see in medical science? The methods in medical science are very limited, right? You can say medicine दे दी जाती है या फिर सर्जरियां कर दी जाती हैं, right? Post surgery, this you can say prophylactic treatments, these things are being covered here, right? Now, basically both of them may be different, but the collaboration between the two, right, can be useful to diagnose disease, to control the disease, right, at the group level as well as at the individual level, right? So you can end the conclusion, that's the interdisciplinary approach which is followed by medical anthropology can be instrumental in improving the overall health of the communities, right? That is what you can end, right? Or you can say that both borrows heavily from each other and the methods and techniques from both sides can be useful, right, for improving the health and you can say to eliminate the diseases, right? This is your second question. Third question, this is a statement given by R.R. Merritt, British evolutionist, right? Anthropology is a child of Darwinism. Discuss. Anthropology is a child of Darwinism. So this statement belongs to R.R. Merritt. British evolutionist who worked in Polynesia. right? And he studied that Polynesian belief in mana. Mana is the impersonal, all-pervading supernatural power, and from here he gave that the earliest form of religion was animism. From animism, according to him, animism evolved, and then polytheism, and so on and so forth. Right? So what R.R. Marett also says, R.R. Marett says that anthropology is the child of Darwinism. That means anthropology डार्विन की थॉट्स का, उसके आइडियाज से शुरू हुआ, राइट? ये कहना चाह रहे हैं. So in this question you have to think that what you have to write, right? You have to tell that are you convinced with this statement? Then you have to give the justification. If you are not convinced, then you have to put the opposing arguments, right, to reject this idea, right? And then you have to write that what is the midway that you think. So what will be your approach to this answer? In the introduction, we talk about R.R. Marett. Right? This statement that also you have to tell. Why he made? Because he was pointing towards the phenomenal contribution that Darwinian ideas have made towards anthropology. Right? Then after that you give arguments that support this, right? Supporting this. And then also you can talk about the arguments which oppose this. And finally, you can say in the conclusion that Darwin's contribution was indispensable, right? Was indispensable, though it may not be the. Why I am saying? Because I don't buy this argument that it is the child of Darwinism, right? So if I am not buying this argument of R.R. Marett, I had some strong belief and reasons to disbelieve it, right? So let me tell you those reasons. First thing, that how you can say that it is the child of Darwin. In the introduction itself you have said that R.R. Marett, recognizing the contribution of Darwin's ideas and his thoughts on anthropology, said this, right, that anthropology is the child of Darwinism. However, there can be opposing arguments which are both are presented below, right? So arguments supporting this and arguments opposing this. So arguments supporting is, see, the first theory, right, or you can say the systematic beginning of anthropology, we are systematic beginning from late 19th century, right, when the first school in anthropology, that is classical evolutionism, emerged, right? This was the beginning, right? Classical evolutionism say we are tracing the beginning of anthropology, actual beginning of anthropology, right? Where the E.B. Tyler, L.H. Morgan, James Fraser, right, Bachofan and Bastian, all these people, they made this school, the earliest school in anthropology, right? And any discipline can trace its beginning from the first theory, the first thought that it had, right? Even only after this, only this become a discipline which started to, teaching, which becomes a discipline of teaching in universities of Britain and America. So naturally, yes, systematic beginning started from here, right? And how? Because what was Darwin's idea? Darwin's idea was that of natural selection, right? right? And evolution, organic evolution, using this idea of natural selection, he was talking about organic evolution. So this becomes, organic evolution becomes, when it was applied to the society, although his contemporary Herbert Spencer, another British, he talks about social Darwinism, even before some time, when Darwin says, right? But still, published idea was that of Darwin. So he talks about that it is social Darwinism. This idea of evolution, or you can say the best society, best community will survive and others will degenerate. That becomes social Darwinism. And it was, you can say, the ideational force for classical evolutionism, right? This social Darwinism was the ideational force, you can say, the ideological power behind the classical evolutionism, right? So this is where we trace the beginning. So that is how you can say that yes, R.R. Marett was right? Because classical evolutionism was a result of social Darwinism, which was based on the idea of evolution and natural selection put forth by Darwin. So that is how you are justifying him, justifying R.R. Marett. Whereas there is another school of thought, right? You can just think that anthropology is as old as the human society or human being itself, right? That means we humans are curious about ourselves from the very first day, right? So you can say anthropology is as old as the humanity itself. This is the opposing argument. As old as the humanity itself. Right? Not only this, you can also talk about first anthropologically oriented work that we study, or you can say the unsystematic beginning of anthropology can be traced back to the times of Herodotus, right? The father of history. So Herodotus, he studied the Greek colonies along the Mediterranean Sea, and he wrote the account about various socio-cultural features as well as biological features of those peoples. Their bizarre customs and everything was covered by Herodotus. Even just after him, even Aristotle, right? Aristotle was given the title of father of anthropology, right? He even defined anthropology as the gossip which revolves around men. An anthropologist is a gossiper which talks about himself, right? So how you can say that it is it is the child of Darwinism? So these arguments, these just reject this hypothesis. Even the works of this Immanuel Kant and others that have enriched anthropology even before what Darwin did. Even Darwin was influenced by Malthus, right? Darwin was influenced by others, biologists and all, right? So we cannot say that Darwin was the sole influence, or Darwin can be treated as the father of anthropology, right? Still we consider father of anthropology is Aristotle, so we are rejecting this hypothesis. But despite these opposing arguments, in the conclusion you will say that despite these arguments, we can say that the contribution of Darwin cannot be minimized, right? Or cannot be put down, because his contribution is phenomenal, right? He made remarkable contribution, and from where we trace out the systematic beginning of anthropology, right? So you can say simply a balanced line that unsystematic beginning was there even before, but the systematic beginning started with Darwin. So that is what you will say, right? You are saying, आपने दोनों बात रख ली. What Marett says, वो भी आपने रख लिया, और आपने diplomatically अपनी बात भी कह दी, right? That is how you will, you can say, use this language to win over the heart of the examiner. Next, define anthropology. and discuss its relevance in contemporary India. Define anthropology and discuss its relevance in contemporary India. Right. There are two questions in this. One is the definition of anthropology, right? And the other is its relevance, right? So let me give you a little brief. So definition, and in definition you can incorporate a little bit of its scope, right? Because the definition will itself tell about its scope, or you can say scope of anthropology. You can use the name of one or two scholars to define anthropology, like you can take Marvin Harris, right? Or you can take just the simplest one, you can just take Clyde Clacon, that it is a mirror for men, right? Or you can even take Herkowitz, who says that it is the study of man and his works. I would say go for Marvin Harris, right? Who talks about the integrated holistic study of the man over time and space, right? Definition. Second is relevance. This relevance is basically applied anthropology, right? Applied anthropology. Application of theories and practices of anthropology on humanity, right? For human welfare. You can simply say this is anthropology put to use for human welfare. This is what you have to discuss in this question, right? Now, the approach, the major dimensions, let me tell you in the beginning. Right, definition and scope. Since the question is very structured, you don't have to think much on it. The only thing where you have to think, you don't jumble up things, rather structure them properly, right? Then when you are going to write the relevance of all the four branches. That is the biological, socio-cultural, linguistic, and archaeological anthropology. Right? When you are going to write the relevance, so relevance is not restricted just to the tribal development, it becomes a small part of this. It is not just related for disease diagnosis, treatment, etc., or gene therapy, etc. Right? It is not just limited to forensics also. Right? Because in biological anthropology you can use forensics, the knowledge of forensic. Right? The linguistic, preservation and conservation of languages. Or you can just say that how you can deal with this linguistic chauvinism, right? This archaeological anthropology, what is it, right? How you can preserve your heritage, your monuments, how you can spread awareness, how you can categorize the information, or you can say the material resources that we excavate in the museums. That is archaeological anthropology, no? So all the four branches. Right? You can also discuss about the crisis in an Indian anthropology in this. You get this opportunity. You can use this opportunity to highlight that how Indian anthropology is not actually up to the mark that it can really do. Right? In India, anthropologists are not, as active, or you can say this anthropology is not being as useful in the policy making or everywhere. So there is crisis in Indian anthropology, right? And we can use this crisis as an opportunity to make anthropology useful, right? So resolve this crisis by writing the way forward, right? So what is your structure? What is your approach? In this approach, you will write definition and scope, you will write relevance of all the 4 branches by giving little bit examples, and then you can also talk about the crisis कि इंडिया में एंथ्रोपोलॉजी को इतना भाव नहीं दिया जाता है, right? Neither the policy makers or even the bureaucrats, they don't talk about anthropology. उनको कोई मतलब नहीं है. Anthropologist is a theoretician in their mind. They don't know anything about the practical reality, ground reality. कैसे काम चलता है उनको नहीं पता है, according to bureaucrats. So that is, you will also do the same once you join, right? So basically, make sure that you use the anthropological knowledge, and that is the way forward. What is the way forward? That anthropologist and administrator both are complementary to each other, and both combine, both join their hands. That can be wonderful for the development, for the policy making, for everything. Okay. So the answer will be define anthropology, right? What Marvin Harris says, the definition will be available to you, right? It is the systematic, holistic, integrated study, universal study of humankind over the time and space, at the all times and all space. In this manner he defined. So you can simply say that anthropology, the scope of anthropology is universal and holistic. It studies everything, every aspect of the mankind, right? In all world and in entire world and all times, past, present and future. That is the scope, right? So you will just define in just 2-3 lines. First definition, then scope. And just after that, you just jump onto the relevance in contemporary India. The examples should be in India, right? From India. That is what you will do. Otherwise, the question will be same, because you are dividing the question on these 4 branches: biological, sociocultural, linguistic and archaeological anthropology, right? See, when you are talking about the relevance in India, what is the relevance of biological anthropology? See, आज की डेट में तो रेलेवेंस पैंडेमिक कंट्रोल करना ही हो रहा है ना? कैसे आरटीपीसीआर हो गया, चाहे तो वो कोविड वैक्सीन हो गया, ठीक है? उसके अलावा भी जेनेटिक डिजीजेस को कंट्रोल करना, उनको डायग्नोज करके कैसे करना, राइट? दैट कैन बी यूज्ड व्हाटएवर if someone go to the hospital, so even before the childbirth, in the first trimester of pregnancy, the doctors, they conduct variety of tests in order to they try to ascertain that whether the child will be healthy or it may have some kind of, you can say, developmental disorders or anything, right? That may be that they run many tests like the chromosomal analysis and all. Okay, so what is this? This is the use of biological anthropology, right? Biological anthropology can be used in sports. अभी ओलंपिक में हमारे कितने जीत के आए, पैरा ओलंपिक में कितने जीत के आए, right? वहाँ पे यूज हो सकता है इसका, right? Even you can talk about, you can understand, you can settle this biological debate, Aryan migration debate in this biological anthropology. Aryan migration debate, this is a very old debate now. That from where Aryans came, है ना? हमारे जो तिलक कहते थे कि वो कहाँ से आए हैं, आर्कटिक से आए हैं, कोई कह रहे थे कहीं से और से आए हैं, राइट? देयर आर मेनी थ्योरीज अबाउट आर्यन माइग्रेशन. सम से नहीं, वो तो इंडिजिनियस है. उस थ्योरी को भी हम सेटल कर सकते हैं यूजिंग दिस बायोलॉजिकल एंथ्रोपोलॉजी मेथड. तो हमारे यहाँ की यूज हो गया ना, इंडिया का यूज हो गया, राइट? देन नेचुरली आज की डेट में आप कार की सीट अच्छी कंफर्टेबल कार बना रहे हो, ऑफिस स्पेसेस डिजाइन कर रहे हो, वहां पे इसका कितना यूज हो सकता है? इंडिया की मिलिट्री, राइट, कॉकपिट डिजाइन में यूज कर सकती है इसको. एर्गोनॉमिक्स, राइट? एर्गोनॉमिक्स इज अ साइंस जो इस डिजाइन से संबंधित है, राइट? सो इट कैन बी यूज्ड देयर आल्सो. ओके, सो दीज आर यूज ऑफ बायोलॉजिकल एंथ्रोपोलॉजी और रेलेवेंस ऑफ बायोलॉजिकल एंथ्रोपोलॉजी इन इंडिया. इवन फॉरेंसिक्स, राइट? बहुत सारे चीजें हैं जिनका डीएनए, फिंगरप्रिंटिंग और इन सब चीज का यूज करके हम यूज करते हैं, राइट? आइडेंटिफिकेशन ऑफ बॉडीज ऑफ वॉर क्राइम्स, ठीक है? बहुत सारे जो वॉर क्राइम्स होते हैं वो वहां पे भी हम फॉरेंसिक्स की हेल्प लेते हैं. तो जम्मू एंड कश्मीर, इवन इन मणिपुर, दैट इरोम शर्मिला वाला केस जो था, उन्होंने वहां पे जो फॉरेंसिक का यूज करके देयर वर सम पर्सनल हु गॉट पनिश्ड, राइट, बिकॉज ऑफ एफर्ट्स ऑफ Irom Sharmila, and there was some case in Jammu and Kashmir also in 2010 around. So that was also that has also used this, right? This anti-Tiwari case, that also is related to forensics. Then socio-cultural anthropology, what is the relevance of it? Tribal development is the biggest use of it, right? Countering communalism and casteism is the biggest issue with it, right? You have some intangible heritage resources which are recognized by UNESCO, right? So the preserving those cultural institutions or those cultural aspects, like music, song, or you can say folk dances, etc., is also under this socio-cultural anthropology, right? Even those artists who are trained in those skills, they can be given some kind of employment, right, using this. The knowledge of socio-cultural anthropology can be useful in policy making, right, for even education, for employment generation, or for better acceptability. Many principles like nature, man, spirit complex, right? Many anthropologists, socio-cultural anthropologists like this S.C. Dubey, L.P. Vidyarthi, right, and others, their knowledge, their models were used by the tribal ministry and even the forest ministry for the sustainable development, you can say, policies, right? Then linguistic anthropology can be used for conservation of languages, right? There are many languages. Majhi language from Sikkim, which recently died in 2015. So there are many languages which are very endangered. They can be conserved using this linguistic approach, right? Ganesh Devi, who participated in this linguistic survey of India, right? So in that we have, we came to know that around 600 languages are endangered in India, right? They are on verge of dying. So we can use this linguistic anthropology to preserve and conserve those languages. Even this linguistic anthropology can be used to promote peace or tolerance among the different linguistic groups. So we can deal with this linguistic chauvinism properly using this linguistic anthropology. This archaeological anthropology can be used for better arranging the museum specimens, for spreading awareness. It can be useful for public archaeology, right? Spreading knowledge about the archaeological remains among the people so that they can be better preserved, right? This can be the use. Now after that, you can just talk about that what is the identity of Indian anthropology, right? Whether they get recognition in the eyes of the administrator. If not, what should be done? That means the anthropologists and administrators should join hand, because what L.P. Vidyarthi says, that anthropologists are the social doctors. They can effectively identify the societal ills and can provide a lasting solution for it. So you can write this, right? So this will be this answer. Next is how you can say that anthropology is a unique discipline, or you can say what makes anthropology a unique discipline. Okay, so start with the definition, right? Approach to this question. Start with the definition, right? Then talk about various perspectives that make anthropology unique, right? And what can be the applications of these perspectives that you can use in the concluding remarks. Right? Conclude with the applications of these perspectives. Right. So what makes anthropology unique? Right, definition you all know. So there are few perspectives in anthropology that makes it unique. First perspective is holism. Right? That anthropology is a holistic discipline. Right? It talks about every aspect of the mankind. Right? It talks about every aspect of the mankind at all places and all times. All aspects means biological, socio-cultural, linguistic and archaeological. You can say that holism covers that fourfold approach. It covers that fourfold approach which was proposed by French Boas. Right? The second unique perspective that makes perspective that makes it holistic is that it talks both about emic as well as etic perspective. Right? It deals with both emic and etic. See, what is emic and what is etic? Both of these, this dichotomy was, these terms were given by Kenneth Pike, right, a linguist. And these are derived from linguistics, from phonetic and phonemic. See, phonetic means hota hai, whatever I speak, this sound, right? This, or you can say this is a sound, just a sound, right? So this sound is phonetic. The meaning of this sound, that I am crying in pain, this is phonemic, right? So phonemic is contextual, right? That is the cultural meaning of that sound, any sound. The cultural meaning of that sound is phonemic, whereas just the sound, the verbal utterance is phonetic, right? So etic is what? It is just what outsiders see, right? It is that without any context. And emic is the insider's perspective, how the people perceive that knowledge in and around them, how they categorize the world in and around them. Etic is the, you can say, anthropologist's perspective, the outsider's perspective. Right? When they observe any cultural phenomena and then they make some observations, that is etic perspective. So it combines both of them very beautifully, emic as well as etic, right? You know that etic perspective was used by Marvin Harris, right? In his School of Cultural Materialism, right? He emphasized that etic perspective is more important to make anthropology a science, because emic perspective can be misleading, right? But the scholars like Malinowski, right, even French Boas, they propounded on emic perspective, right? And even it goes further deep in new ethnography. Harold Conklin, good enough. They say no, whatever emic perspective used by Malinowski, even that was biased. So it goes beyond that, right? Okay, so it is holistic. It combines both of these perspectives. So that makes it holistic, right? That makes it unique. Third important perspective is that it combines both synchronic and diachronic studies. Synchronic, what is synchronic? Synchronic means at the time, right? Right now, here and now, you can say, in words of French, no, Radcliffe Brown, here and now, right? Radcliffe Brown, functionalist, right? And even Malinowski, right? They were empiricists. They believe in empirical studies. So they emphasized that we should not go into the past because we cannot go back and collect facts, right? We can have facts presently, here and now. So we must focus on synchronic studies. Whereas there are others, like the disciple of Brown, Evans Pritchard, right? Evans Pritchard say that anthropology is historiography. According to Evans Pritchard, anthropology is historiography. So we cannot neglect historical aspect if you want to understand even the functional aspect, right? He was also functionalist. So he rejected their hypothesis, and you can say here both are useful. See, diachronic was not used first time by Evans Pritchard, but even before, the school of historical particularism, what is it? It is the historical study. The students of French Boas, like Alfred Kroeber, Clark Whistler, right? All of them, and all the diffusionists, all the classical evolutionists, they were studying the historical aspect. So, synchronic as well as diachronic studies, right? For your better understanding, chron is the unit of time, right? So, from there you can link. For the beginners, it can be useful. Then we can say that it has it has a very important philosophy that makes it unique, that is cultural relativism. So this philosophy, this approach of cultural relativism, which was propounded by French Boas, right? It says that every culture is unique, right? And all the cultural practices are equally valid. No culture is superior or inferior, right? This becomes the base of anthropology, right? This becomes the founding philosophy of anthropology to promote peace and tolerance along the world, to counter racism, to counter ethnic violence, etc., etc., right? This was propounded first by Boas, but his students like Ruth Benedict's work, that was Patterns of Culture, right? That was, you can say, the biggest proponent after Boas was Ruth Benedict, because what she says in this book and in this theory, that every culture has its own unique pattern, right? So she is also propounding the same principle, cultural relativism. Not only her, but Alfred Kroeber, Clark Whistler and others, they also talks about the cultural relativism, and they promotes cultural relativism. Then, okay, after that, the objective nature, right? Anthropology is an objective science. It rejects subjectivity, right? It is empirical, right? Fact-based. Whatever theories where we have, see what was the reason for rejection of classical evolutionism or earlier theories? Because they were speculative, right? Imaginative. They have presumed something in order to explain the cultural phenomena. But this was rejected because anthropology, according to French Boas and his followers after that, it is an objective discipline, right? It relies on core facts, and these facts you can see, you can understand from the other perspective, that is the field work through participant observation, right? Because for anthropologists, the field is the laboratory, right? This is the statement given by Arkovites, American anthropologist. Fieldwork through participant observation. So according to M.J. Harkovites, laboratory is the field, and the anthropology, the field, the community, the group, the cultural group is the field for the laboratory for the anthropologist. This statement was made by M.J. Harkovites, right? So basically, he says that the anthropologist should feel the cultural phenomena by his own senses, right? And that also makes anthropology more objective, more holistic, right? Not only this, anthropology also use the comparative method, comparative and scientific method, right? Anthropology is both descriptive, right? It describes the cultural phenomena, right? As well as it is comparative. How you can see this? See, description of the culture that comes under ethnography, right? And comparative, it is ethnology, right? Ethnos plus graphos, that means the description of all aspects of the people, that is racial, linguistic, cultural, social, political, economic, anything, right? Description of all aspects is ethnography. So ethnography is also part of anthropology, and ethnology, that is the comparative study of different cultures in order to make generalization. Suppose there is one thing, right? There is something which is found in all the three cultures, right? You can say a simple thing that a bow and arrow is found in all the three cultures. So the anthropologist can think and say that bow and arrow is found in all cultures. This is a theory, right? They can observe that marriage, the monogamy is found in here, monogamy is found in here, and monogamy is found in here. So the anthropologist can say, ethnologist can say, the monogamy is a universal phenomena, right? So this is the law generalization which is based on this comparative study, where this comparison is done using these ethnographies, right? One culture may have one ethnography, and this ethnologist can compare various ethnographies to make laws or generalizations. See, ethnographer का example आपको पता है, Malinowski, Brown, Pritchard, Mayer Fortis, Raymond Firth, and so many you can say. Even Edmund Leach, सभी ने ethnographies लिखी है. Ethnologist आपके, right? Even Tyler, he was an ethnologist, right? He used this comparative method, right? When he gave that cultural evolutionary hypothesis. Even Morgan gave that hypothesis for using this comparative method. So all these are basically, what are these? These are the unique things about anthropology. These make anthropology a unique discipline. Now, finally, in the concluding remarks, you can talk that how these unique perspectives can be useful, right? In the concluding remarks, you can talk about that anthropology have debunked the racial and ethnic myths, right? It can be useful to promote peace and tolerance across the world. It can be useful in ergonomics, in industrial, you can say research and design. It can be useful in making policies and etc. Right? So you can say that it is a whole science which can be useful in variety of things, right? For making human life better and easier. That is what you have to write in this answer, and this is it for our this test one. Thank you.